Are we okay to start? Great stuff. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this month's meeting of the Planning Committee. It's good to see everybody here. I know most people will be here for the appeal decisions at item 8, but we've got a couple of issues just to attend to before we get there. Do we have any apologies today?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Bridgman. Councillor Nicholson will be substituting.
Okay, and right on cue, we welcome Patrick. No, that's okay. That's okay. We'll speak to Mark Coker about that later. Don't worry. Does anybody have any declarations of interest to make at this stage? No. If not, the usual procedures apply. If anything does occur to you during our proceedings, wait till whoever's spoken has come to an end, catch my eye, and then we'll record whatever we need to. The minutes of the last meeting from the 24th of October have been circulated. Are people happy for those to be entered into the record? I'm not seeing any dissent, so Angela, if you could pass those across, I'd be grateful. I've got no urgent business. I don't think we have any questions from members of the public. Is that right?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Which takes us on to the planning applications for consideration. And I think we've got one today. It's item 6, so 6.1, and we're at Home Park Football Ground, page 5 in your papers. And Amy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. This application has been referred to Planning Committee by Councillor Kate Taylor. This application is seeking permission for a temporary marquee to be used by the Green Taverners Members Club with associated development including porta cabins for the use of toilets, cellar storage and rainwater storage tank. Home Park is a football ground and home to Plymouth Argyle Football Club. As a result, the site itself is quite large, but the application site is only concerned with a small portion to the south of the stadium, and the site falls within the Peveril ward of the city. Surrounding the site is Home Park Stadium to the north, a car park to the east, Central Park to the south, and the Life Centre to the west. The closest residential properties are located at Outland Road, which is approximately 250 metres away from the application site. The site is allocated within the Plymouth and South West Devon Joint Local Plan under Policy PLY 58.2 as Home Park, which looks to complete the stadium improvements and appropriate ancillary uses. As the development is set within the confines of Home Park site and would be of a scale and nature that is considered to be complement the existing sporting use of Home Park, the principle of development is considered acceptable. The development would not prejudice the sporting use of Home Park and the wider recreational use of Central Park. The Green Taverners have previously been granted permission on site for a supporters bar. It is therefore considered that the principle of development is acceptable and in accordance with this allocated policy. Here is the site location plan, which shows the application site in relation to the wider Home Park Stadium. This image here just gives an approximate location of the proposed marquee, shown by the red box in the middle. From this image, you can see the existing Green Taverners building, which was granted consent in 2018. The Green Taverners bar has been used for the last 5 years, but the building has since been purchased by Plymouth Argyle to be used as a hospitality space. And the Green Taverners are therefore seeking permission for this marquee for a 3-year period to continue operating the supporters bar at Home Park. The proposed marquee will be located approximately 4 metres away from the existing Green Taverners building. The marquee is proposed to be situated on land to the south of the stadium, opposite the Mayflower Grandstand and adjacent to an existing car park. The proposed marquee is 35 metres long, 15 metres wide and 3 metres in height to its eaves and 5.4 metres to its ridge. Along the western elevation of the proposed marquee would be porta cabins containing men's and women's toilets and a separate disabled toilet with level access from the finished floor level of the marquee. The proposed marquee would be a steel structure faced with white PVC face panels and completed with a pitched canvas-style roof. Alongside the proposed marquee will be integrated steel porta cabins that will be painted white and green. The proposed development is quite substantial in its size due to its but due to its single-storey nature and positioning behind the Life Centre and Home Park Stadium, it's largely screened from public views. Whilst the design of the marquee structure is simple in its nature and not of a high quality, it's recognised that its temporary nature does not significantly harm the character of the area in the long term. It is not considered that the marquee is a suitable long-term solution, and the supporting information has stated that the intention is for the marquee to be temporary, with it being there for a period of 3 years, which would align with the lease offered to the Green Taverners. Given the temporary nature, it's considered that the proposed development is acceptable on balance, and a condition has been recommended that restricts the temporary use to the 3 years. The proposed marquee is intended to fill a similar function to that of the previously consented Green Taverners bar. It will be used as a supporters bar that is open to the Green Tavern members, but also available for events such as fundraisers and birthday parties. The closest residential properties are located on Outland Road, as mentioned previously, which is approximately 250 metres away from the application site. It's considered that the site is situated a far distance from the nearest residential properties. The Public Protection Service have not raised any objections from a noise perspective. They have advised that they had been consulted on the application as part of the licensing process, and conditions have been added to the premise licence in accordance with the Council's licensing policy. The Public Protection Service have recommended a condition that restricts the opening hours from 8 in the morning to 12:30 at night, which has been added. The Public Protection Service would be the body responsible for investigating any noise complaints made. Therefore, it is considered that the scheme's noise impact would not be significant enough to warrant the refusal of this application. A public comment was received that raised concerns about the impact of the development on the enjoyment, amenity and recreational use of Central Park. It is, however, considered that the proposed use of the marquee would not have a significant impact on the use of Central Park. While there will be some noise from the use of the marquee, it's not considered it would be significant enough to warrant the refusal of this application. Restrictive conditions have been recommended that would ensure the marquee is adequately managed and maintained to ensure that there is no detrimental impact on the amenity for visitors and users of Central Park. The Highway Authority originally were consulted on the scheme and initially raised some concerns and sought some further information. The Highway Authority were concerned about the intensification of the site and possible addition of events causing an increase in trips. Further information has therefore been submitted, which was reviewed by our Highway Authority, who have now recommended the application for approval subject to conditions, which includes the submission of a management plan and a travel plan, which needs to be submitted and approved prior to the first use of the marquee. I'd like to make the committee aware of an addendum report that amends the wording of 2 of the recommended conditions following the submission of further information, and also includes an update to the number of public comments received. However, since the addendum report was written, a further 2 letters of support have also been submitted. The updated number of public comments, therefore, is 102 public comments being received from a total of 116 different contributors. 1 of the contributors are objecting to the proposal, 1 contributor was neutral, and the other 114 contributors supported the scheme. To conclude, the application herefore is recommended for conditional approval. Thank you.
Amy, thank you very much indeed. We have one speaker with us today, which is Mr. Clark. Are you with us, Mr. Clark? If you'd like to make your way down to the chair, sir, you're welcome to join us. You have 5 minutes. Would you like to be told when only one is left? Okay.
I am Graham Clark, a Chartered Town Planner, and I've been asked to speak at the committee on behalf of the applicant Plymouth Argyle and the intended occupiers of the proposed marquee, the Green Taverners, or GTs as they're called. I was chair of the Argyle Fans Trust at the time. Supporters, the council, and James Brent worked together so effectively to secure the future of Argyle in 2011. The GTs were set up as a group of volunteers to support the staff who went without pay during the administration period of the club. Since then, they've become a private club of 700 members and organised events on behalf of supporters. Over the years, they've raised over £250,000 for charitable purposes. The GTs took over the Pyramid Suite marquee in 2011 at Argyle that had stood on the land since 2004. It was slightly smaller than what is now proposed. It had a licence capacity of 500. A hospitality marquee has therefore stood on the Argyle land for 16 of the last 20 years with a similar capacity to what is proposed, without any associated traffic or parking issues. The GTs then raised over £1 million to build a new two-storey building for hospitality purposes. It had a capacity of 600. When open on non-match days, its use caused no traffic or parking issues. The club has since purchased the building, and part of the agreement with the GTs was to enable them to put a marquee on Argyle's land, now known as the Mayflower Quarter, for a temporary period of 3 years. This was to enable the club to agree a master plan with the council for the Home Park Stadium to accommodate future capacity increases and a permanent development of the Mayflower Quarter land. The highway officer objected in August, stating that the marquee proposal did not contain any EV chargers or accessible spaces. He determined that the proposed marquee would increase the number of vehicle movements such that it would prejudice highway safety, interrupt the free flow of traffic, and be an unwarranted hazard to traffic. He also required the submission of a travel statement, which was later submitted. Highway officers have previously supported the club's fan zone by the Mayflower Grandstand. They also supported the Winter Wonderland proposal in Central Park, which has an operating capacity of 3,000 at any one time over its 9.5-hour opening period. The highway officer supported this proposal, making specific reference to its sustainable location, the available public transport networks, and the opportunity for walking and cycling routes. The Winter Wonderland proposal received no objections from the public. Other events in Central Park, such as at the Life Centre, the circus, concerts, the Oktoberfest, have also proceeded without highway or public objection. The transport statement submitted by the GTs pointed out the Home Park is in a very sustainable location, and many thousands are able to walk to Home Park, use the extensive cycle network, use the main bus route, or even come by train. However, the highway officer still recommended two pre-use conditions relating to the submission and approval of a management plan and a travel plan, including a requirement for a shower for any staff cycling to the marquee. Just to be clear, there will be 2 permanent staff and 10 temporary staff operating the marquee. So on behalf of the GTs, I would suggest that these conditions are not necessary in the light of the comments of the highway officers on other proposals in Central Park.
1 minute.
Any discharge of the conditions will further delay the opening of the marquee at significant cost to the GTs. The delays so far have cost them approximately £50,000. The suggested conditions significantly exceed, in our opinion, what has been required for other approved uses in Central Park, and they fail the tests in paragraph 55 of the NPPF, in that they're not necessary or relevant in all the circumstances. So I would respectfully request that should you be minded to approve the application, you do so without the imposition of these 2 conditions. Thank you.
Mr. Clark, thank you very much indeed. We appreciate your time here. If you'd like to make your way back, thank you. As the committee will know, this has been referred to us for consideration by Councillor Kate Taylor, who can't be with us today. Kate has submitted a statement which she has asked to be read to the committee. It's not something we usually do, so I won't do it without the committee's agreement. Is there any opposition to that? I'm not seeing... I say is there any opposition? I'm seeing shaking heads, which normally does mean opposition, but I know it's shaking heads in approval. So I will now read Councillor Taylor's submission. So this is her words. Good afternoon, Planning Committee. I'm sorry not to be with you today. I had intended to make this statement in person, but unfortunately I had an incident at home yesterday which has kept me from you today. I wanted to let you know why this application is in front of you today, given its relatively simple nature and the overwhelming support from the public for the application. The reason for this is simple, because a resident of Ham Ward asked me to call the application in. I have been very careful not to declare a position. in support or otherwise of the application, although judging by the grief I've received online from supporters of the application for my supposed opposition, anyone would think I had declared a position. However, the reason this is before you today is because a resident of mine did have concerns about this application, and, as he lives in the ward that I represent, responsibility for trying to assist falls to me. I have therefore exercised my ability as a ward councillor to represent one of my residents on an issue which, rightly or wrongly, they feel very strongly about. One of the benefits of our planning system is that it allows a voice to residents on applications, big or small, whether we as politicians agree with them or we don't. For this reason, I am grateful to the committee for discussing the application, hearing the concerns of my resident and allowing their voice to be heard. Warm regards, Kate. And that concludes Councillor Taylor's statement. Is it to do with the application, Patrick, or is it more?
It's a matter for you, Chair, actually, because clearly the Constitution of the Council allows members, as ward members, to refer matters to the Planning Committee. Where it's not a ward matter, it's at your discretion as Chair of the Committee. And I wondered if you could share with the committee why you thought it was justifiable for one resident to have a ward councillor refer it when it's not within the ward, and why you thought it's so significant this matter had to come to Planning Committee in the first place.
Well, first of all, it's not a numbers game. So it's not a case of one resident or 100 residents or 1,000 residents. I took advice from the head of development management, so it wasn't, although it's formally my call, as it were, I didn't do that in isolation. I spoke to the head of development management, who ironically isn't with us today, but I'm sure Stuart can fill you in on the detail. And it was the impact that the resident felt on the ward or rather Councillor Taylor's ward, I should say. And I think given the substantial feeling there is, I thought it was appropriate, therefore, rather than to have it decided behind closed doors in private, to give it the public airing that we are today, to alleviate for Councillor Taylor and any of her residents who felt the same, any feeling of mistrust having it done in private, which I hope we can achieve.
Well, thank you for explaining it. I'll say a bit more when I make a contribution. Thank you.
Okay. It's now open to the committee. Who wants to go for it? Jeremy, and then we'll come back to Patrick. Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I can remember the huge pride and sense of achievement from the Green Travellers when they managed to raise their funds to build their permanent base and bar facility in Home Park, and after many decades, be able to move out of the marquee which they'd inhabited in chilly conditions. And it's a real shame that they happened to open this bar at the start of COVID, and now that they've had to, I'm not party to the financial considerations of the Green Taverners, but it's sad that they've had to give this up to Argyle themselves and have now applied to move back into the marquee. So I am, after hearing the public speaker and looking at the evidence, in complete agreement that we should be granting permission. I am interested in the additional conditions that have been raised on account of the traffic. So would it be possible to get some more details on those extra conditions? Especially, it was alluded to that that there is a requirement for the provision of shower facilities for cyclists. As a daily cyclist myself, as my primary mode of transport, I don't feel the need to shower every time I get into work because I cycled. Maybe that's just me, I'm being unusual, and I apologise to Anne next to me, and I should assure her that I did actually unusually drive in today. So could we have some more details on why they need shower facilities and why those extra conditions were added, please?
Yep, sure. So the two conditions that the speaker raised was the management plan and the travel plan. So, as mentioned, the Highway Authority initially raised some concerns in principle, asked for some further details because the increase in trip size, yes, they're coming out of Green Taverners and they're going to this marquee, but the Green Taverners building will still be used, so an increase potentially in trips. So in terms of the management plan, that's something we generally require around events, just ensuring it's managed correctly, and we've got those details. Clearly, they're run very well. In the letters of support, everyone mentions about how well they're run. It's just so we've got it in a condition so we can ensure that it complies with that. And in terms of the travel plan, the wording of the condition is recommended from a highway authority point of view, so I will just pass on to our highway authority. But I just wanted to also mention that the speaker did make reference to the Winter Wonderland application that is right adjacent, and that was given consent last year. So that was given consent on a 3-year basis to run over a 3-month period, Christmas period. But with the submission of those applications, we did get an event management plan and a traffic management plan, so they were submitted as part of that proposal. So consistency-wise, again, we're kind of looking for the same level of details with this application, so that's why we've asked for that. But I'll just pass to Alan, our highways officer, just to expand on the travel plan condition.
Yeah, my name's Alan Shales. I was asked to provide Amy with consultation response from the local highways authority. The travel plan condition is very much a standard condition that when I had this application in, I took from our list of standard conditions. We've got 70 travel plans like this operating in the city, and it's very standard. In terms of the showers, I wouldn't hold up this application if the case was made that showers are unrealistic. That wouldn't be an issue, but we do like to provide for cyclists as best we can because they're an important mix in terms of the transport policy of the city.
Just to be clear, that these shower facilities are for the provision of staff, not for the patrons of the bar.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, were the plans submitted in relation to the other applications which Mr. Clark mentioned and you referred to? Were they required as conditions? Because I was getting a little bit confused, not to downplay Mr. Clark, but he seemed to give the impression they weren't required under the other application, but you're saying they were received. Were they required as a condition or conditions in the other applications?
They were submitted with the application, so it wasn't required as a condition because they were already present, whereas we've conditioned the submission of them because they weren't submitted as part of this application.
Is it fair, probably best to ask Carly or Natalie, is it fair to ask whether they would have been required had they not been submitted up front as Amy described?
Yes, they would have. Yeah, we would have secured them by condition had they not been submitted with the application.
Thanks. Jeremy, you raised the conditions. Did you want to pursue that in terms of any amendments, or are you, in inverted commas, okay at the moment? Of course. And the next one to do that was Patrick.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Members, I would like just to start off by saying that it's a lesson learned today what potential harm a referral can be to an organisation. So this application was submitted on the 5th of August, before the football season started, with government guidance that we would have determined it by the 30th of September, in line with the normal period for this type of application. But here we are on the 14th of November, actually discussing it for the first time. So I'm not sure I've actually seen a more onerous referral by a member of the council to the planning committee in all the years I've been here. And I genuinely do believe in democracy, and I respect your point of view, Chair. You're the chair of this committee and you made that judgment. But the judgment that we've heard from Mr. Clark on behalf of the Green Taverners is that this has a massive impact on the Green Taverners and those most loyal fans of Plymouth Argyle in this city and beyond. And that's something I think we should all take into account in the consideration of this application. If it wasn't for the Green Taverners over the years, Plymouth Argyle may not be here today. And the reward...
Patrick, I'm always loath to interrupt, as you know, and I hope you know I have the greatest respect for you, but I think you're straying into an area of disagreement with Councillor Taylor's judgment to call it in, which you're very, very welcome to take up with her. And I did think I did hear you say something along the lines of it's something we should consider today. Could I ask that we stick to the planning merits of approved... Bear with me. approving or rejecting the planning application. If you do have any complaints with Councillor Taylor and any effect the referral has had or may have had on the applicant, could I please, I'm not going to stop you with that, but could you take that up with Councillor Taylor away from a forum that should be limited to the merits or demerits of approving or rejecting the application, please?
It's not per se an issue with Councillor Taylor, but obviously you've made a judgment call as to whether it got referred to committee or not, and I just wanted to précis my introductory remarks on the impact.
Well, I think you've done that. Can
Fine.
Could
So
you,
I'll have to move on,
I
just wanted to put that
I'm
on
sure we'd all
record.
be happy if you could.
Fine.
Could you stick to the merits and demerits of the
I'll get into
application
that.
and any amendments you might want to
But
make?
I think this is the first time that the public at large has seen members at work on this planning application. So I think it's important to mention it, given the fact that Mr. Clark has made representation.
Patrick, I've given you lots of opportunity.
I'm moving on
If the next
to the
sentence
subject.
isn't about the content of the planning merits, I am going to call somebody else.
Well, if that's the way you want to operate democracy, but I'll talk about the application. So the application before us is a very serious application by the Green Taverners to re-provide their facility for the benefit of their members, but also the benefit of Plymouth Argyle. And I think they're fair points that Mr. Clark has made. And I think to put Mr. Clark's representations into perspective, he ran the City Council's Development Management Service for a number of years. He's a very experienced town and country planner. And I think members of this committee should take very seriously the matters he raises. And I think they're very fair, because the points on the conditions, Chair, about pre-use will impact the Green Taverners' ability to implement any condition approval that the committee may or may not give today. So I do think there does need to be a bit more detailed discussion on the conditions, because whilst they might look on the face of it to be just paragraphs of words, in terms of their implementation, they can be hours and hours of work plus negotiation. So I would be much more in favour, Chair, that if we provide, and I certainly would fully support a condition approval, and just for the benefit of those that might be watching, generally planning permissions are given with conditions. They're not generally given without any conditions, and there is always one condition of implementation generally within 3 years. This is a temporary permission, so you wouldn't get an unconditional approval. But it is important that we address, obviously, the points that are being raised. I fully support the planning application and would support it with appropriate conditions. So I don't know, Amy, as the case officer, on the representations that have been made, and we just heard from the transport officer, but on the management plan, which is a pre-use condition, but also the travel plan, what your view would be if those requirements were provided within 6 months of a conditional approval, what your professional opinion would be on that, please. Thanks, Chair.
I suppose it's a tough one for me to answer, because, I've done it as pre-use because we need to trigger it to get in. But, I appreciate 6 months gives it, I suppose, a clause for when it needs to come in. I suppose one thing I wanted to emphasise, and what I've also emphasised to the applicants, is we are keen to work with them. It does need to be just proportionate. We have asked for these details during the application stage, but they haven't been submitted, so that's why we're at this stage where we're having to condition them. I think a 6-month one could potentially be acceptable, but I would just want to confirm that with my highways officer, given that they're the ones that recommended it. Could we just be clear what you are suggesting, Patrick, please?
I would like the option, so if the option were not to remove the condition, which I think is what the Green Taverners representative is asking for, whether it could be a post-approval, condition approval condition, rather than us having to approve a pre-use one. So I would like to know what the options are. You know, I think preferably the two conditions that Green Taverners are suggesting should be removed, I think should be removed. In the event that they couldn't be removed, can we have a post-implementation period rather than a pre-use one, which effectively would mean the Green Taverners may not have a facility during this season. And we're already in November, you know, but we're not far off halfway through the season. So the likelihood of them supplying and satisfying conditions and providing facility within this season is at a very high risk of not being provided.
Well, I'm sure given what we're dealing with, everybody would want to be as flexible and common sense as possible. So where would we stand with options, which I think is a very fair question.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of options, I suppose the options before you guys are whether you want to remove those conditions, agree to the conditions as I've recommended, or you can amend or vary the conditions to how you guys see fit, which could amend the trigger point. I've put it as a trigger that they've got to do it prior to the use of that marquee. So they are able to put the marquee up, they just wouldn't be able to use it as that space until one is being given. But yeah, I suppose it's down to you as a committee to vary the trigger when that information is submitted. So like Councillor Nicholson has said, you can do it via months from when the decision is issued.
Okay. Patrick, did you want to come back on what we've just heard? 'Cause in fairness, it was your suggestion.
I think that's very sensible. We'll see how the debate goes. Thank you.
Okay. I've got Ian next.
Thank you, Chair. Having considered the papers, and I appreciate we're early in the debate, but I'm very supportive of the application. What I'm not all that keen on is precedent conditions being added to an application. We must consider each application on its own merits. And whilst I appreciate the debate we're having, I very much agree with what's been advanced by Mr. Clark. And I would be as bold as to suggest and propose that they are removed rather than varied or extended. I appreciate you want a seconder for that, but that's my contribution, Chair.
Ian, we'll see how we go and then come back to it if needs be. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Jeremy was next.
So, thank you very much, Chair. I'm minded to agree with the point made by Councillor Nicholson that the extension of the planning because of the requirement to come to committee has delayed the this application, and that a 6-month extension post, I suppose, commissioning of the tent put into use for meeting the travel conditions does make a lot of sense. Given that the other, I suppose, uses of marquee facilities in Central Park and beyond have all had to submit these travel plans, it does make sense that I think it'd be a strange precedent to say that this particular marquee and this particular use of Central Park or its environs doesn't have to have a travel plan. Doesn't make much sense. It does set a precedent for others because, effectively the public speaker is saying, oh, we've got a precedent from the past that we haven't needed to have these travel plans put in place, but, previous applications have put those in place. And I don't understand why the applicant has not, on request from the planning office, put those plans in place so that they can, with alacrity, open their facility. We can only guess. But I think it's important that they are put in place, and consideration for travel is, I suppose, considered by the applicant because travel, parking, issues around the stadium are an issue, and they're an increasing issue for the residents of Peveril, the residents for Stoke, and residents for Plymouth in general, because Plymouth Argyle is doing fantastically well. They're attracting larger and larger crowds. Those crowds are largely parking on the streets of that the residents use. So it is important to have a travel plan put in place so that the users of the facility are told about alternative travel routes into the Green Taverners marquee on travel day. Are they going to use their buses? Are they going to use active travel? Are they going to use other travel plans which don't involve cars because there's limited parking facilities? Are they going to use the park and ride? By putting a travel plan in place, then the users of the marquee can be told about all these facilities and encouraged to use them rather than adding to the traffic and parking woes of the area around Home Park. So I think it's important that we do have this plan in place. I don't think the opening of the marquee is going to have a significant impact on travel on match days, it being a drop in the ocean, since it's a relatively small facility with the capacity of Home Park in general. But I think it's important that they do consider them, that they do continue to encourage active and other travel methods to the stadium on match days and outside of match days. So I'd like to see it continue to be a condition, but willing to, as I say, go along with Councillor Nichols' suggestion that those plans can be delayed by up to 6 months after the start of operation of the facility. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Matt was next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm broadly in support of what Councillor Nicholson said. I'm in favour of this planning application, and it would be a shame to stop them from getting their marquee open as soon as possible. But I do agree with what Councillor Goslin just said. I think a travel plan is still important, but given that on the busiest days that this marquee is going to be in use, the people travelling there are going to be travelling there anyway because they're there for the football. It's open before and after the match. It's not open during, so you're not getting an additional 600 people on top of the 16,000 that go to Argyle every Saturday anyway. I would like to keep a travel plan because I think it's important, but pushing that back 6 months for them to have to submit it and get it in place would be the right move, in my opinion.
Thanks, Matt. Kevin?
Yeah, it was pretty much equally saying what Councillor Smith did. I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you to Mr. Clark and all the work that he's done previously. But yeah, for me, if we could make this the travel plan to be put in the off season of Argyle, it means that there'd be an unlikely to be losing any significant business, and it'd be a lot easier time to do it, I believe.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'd like to look at some of the issues, I guess maybe starting with some of the easiest ones. I think for myself, we've heard the requirement of showering just seems completely unnecessary, and I strongly feel this shouldn't be holding up this application. I think when we have the feedback from Councillor Taylor and her ward member, I think I can relate myself to using that space. I'll often take my young children, my daughters, for a walk there, or my dog, or both at the same time. And to be honest, that space has been a gravelled parking bay, and I can only perceive that actually having a smart, neat marquee there is going to enhance the space for 3 years. So I think hopefully that kind of sums up how I feel about those components. I think Councillor Smith was quite astute with sort of how this space is going to be used. It's not going to be recruiting hordes of additional people. So I think we have to balance our consideration on this. I would lean towards what Councillor Goslin is saying. At the end of the day, if there are management and travel plans in place for other applications that are using very nearby spaces within Central Park, I think we have to consider that. I'd probably go one step further than Councillor Nicholson, though, and given where we are in the season, suggest maybe that we actually extend that to 1 year, to give Green Taverners a chance to actually fulfil this and do this and get this operational, particularly if there's already been significant losses at this time. I think that's where I am. I'm just very conscious, though, I feel very strongly this should be moving forward. The economic impact of, Argyle is huge to our city. And I think this is an increasingly important component of that, and we'd be negligent not to remember that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Josh. Kathy was next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in favour of this application as well, but looking at the conditions, I wonder if it's necessary to have a travel plan. We've got a management. The management plan I accept and I agree should be put in place, but I think some of that would in fact cover some of what's the travel arrangements as well. And I would be happy to have the management plan and then delete the travel plan. Because I think that would then, you know, cover most aspects of what we're concerned about.
Thanks, Kathy. Ian, I promised we'd come back to yourself. Patrick, if you'll forgive me just for 1 second. Ian, I think your suggestion, and stop me if I'm wrong, was to delete conditions 3 and 4. I think that was what I got from your comments. Is that fair?
Yes, Chair. I appreciate Councillor Gosling raised some very valid observations. I mean, we don't want to be setting precedents, but in line with the papers, they come to us as sui generis. This is the case very much at this venue, one that's already equipped for dealing with volumes of patrons and working hard with the City Council and all other transport providers to ensure that the journeys to and from the ground have less impact on neighbours as the seasons go on. So I appreciate it's a really difficult thing to manage, but it does concern me, notwithstanding delay to get this matter here today, but the financial impact on the club, and as Mr. Clark set out, I recall those days when the staff weren't getting paid, and this is potentially going to add further costs. So, and it is a balancing act as we consider every type of application. We have to balance it. And I think that, the provision of showers, for example, it's completely unnecessary in these circumstances. I agree with those observations. The travel plan vis-à-vis the management plan, and already the travel arrangements in place. So I'm not satisfied that they are necessary, but I'm one member. I'm putting that to the committee. If I lose, I'm not going to gather my stuff and walk out and protest. However,
can I suggest, given what I took from Kathy's comment, would it help if we took them separately? Would people object to that, Patrick?
I think the major distinction that members of the committee should be aware of, this is a temporary planning permission. It's not a permanent one. And what we've heard both from officers on the site visit today, but also from Mr. Clark in his representations, there is a master plan being developed for the overarching Plymouth Argyle facilities. And that master plan should deal with these issues in the way that a master plan is taken forward. So I'd happily second Councillor Darcy's proposal to delete these 2 conditions, because it's only a temporary permission, and whatever happens, a reapplication beyond 3 years will need to come back before the committee, but one would hope that the master plan will be submitted, which will deal with not only the Green Taverners, but generally Plymouth Argyle and any other activity in this vicinity. And that's a far better vehicle, I'd suggest, to deal with the concerns that might exist around travel and management plans. So in the first instance, I'm happy to second it and put it to the vote. Whether you do them independently, Chair, is entirely up to you. But ultimately, I think we should test that and then possibly move to other options if it's not favoured by the committee.
I appreciate your point about testing, which is a fair one. Would you be happy if we did look at them separately? Because what I don't want is any decision to override anything else that we might tie our hands later on in the debate. So the first issue before us then would be to remove and stop again, Ian, as the mover, stop me if I get anything wrong from your proposals, would be to remove condition 3, which I'll take Patrick as seconding. I'll come to our officers first, if I may, just to see if there are any obvious implications that we're missing if we were to go down that route. So, Carly and Natalie, could I perhaps ask you to come in at that point?
Yeah, sure. Other than, the obvious ones, if there are impacts on traffic or management of the site, we won't be able to take any action from a planning enforcement point of view, because we won't have any conditions or documents to go against. So just as long as members are aware that, by removal of these conditions, if issues arise on those matters, then, we won't be able to follow them up by enforcing those details.
Anne? And can I apologise? I should have welcomed you to your first committee meeting. That's awfully remiss of me. Maybe you just saw. Maybe I'm so used to seeing you in Devonport, you blend in. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But welcome to your first meeting and first comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I do support this application by the Green Taverners. I think they have done some amazingly brilliant work. But, I do have a but, with regards to the management plan, and especially with what Carly has just kindly clarified. We have to have something in place regarding at least noise management and security management, at least. Because whilst this is only a temporary planning application for 3 years, 3 years is still a very long time if something goes wrong and we don't have any paperwork to go back to because we didn't have a condition put in place for a management plan. So I would be very, very uncomfortable if there wasn't noise management and security management at least that covered in a plan, because we would expect it from any other applicant wanting to do something within Central Park.
Thanks. And is it on condition 3, Jeremy? On this point? Yep, over to you.
It's just on the point that raised by Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Darcy on the fact that this is only a temporary structure with a 3-year limit because they're awaiting the master plan for development of Home Park. I'm sure Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Darcy have seen many master plans for the development of Home Park over the last 20 years, most of which have not come to fruition. I don't think it would be any surprise to anyone if this master plan for the development of ice rinks, cinemas and other things that have come forward to various committees don't come to fruition within 3 years, and that we see that this marquee is extended maybe 3 years again, 6 years again, who knows. So I think it's likely that the, I suppose, missing elements of a normal planning application, i.e. management plan and a travel plan, would have repercussions that go beyond the limitations of this 3 years. And if we set a precedent this time that they can be absent in any future extensions of that, then it's highly likely that those precedents would pass forward as well. So just take that into consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jeremy. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to agree with Councillor Freeman about not just getting rid of the management plan full stop. I think there are things in there that are important, and I think it'd be a mistake to get rid of them. It also does cover some things that could also be covered by the travel plan, the very basic things: traffic, parking management, EV charging, accessible parking. So I think would be better keeping the management plan in place, putting a 6-month time frame on it, so not making it pre-use, and then getting rid of the travel plan altogether, because the management plan covers some of that anyway, and some of the stuff in the travel plan is just unnecessary. Some of the stuff we've spoken about already, showers and changing facilities for staff and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd want to keep the management plan, but then talk about getting rid of the travel plan.
Thanks. We'll stick to, I totally get what you're saying. We'll stick to condition 3 at the moment, just for ease of business here. Ian, you've heard the debate. If I were to take the 2 proposals together, which would be to keep the management plan but add the 6 months to it, would that be something the committee could support? I'm always keen to reach consensus if we can. Would you be content to sign up to that?
Well, Chair, I'm somewhat warned that there seems to be consensus that condition 4 is probably unnecessary. I've put the proposal. If the committee wish to vote against, you've taken them separately. So let's go on the vote on 3, and then we can move to 4.
I'll go on the. I'll take 2. Given the way the debate has gone, I'll take 2 issues with condition 3. One is its continuing existence. If your proposal is successful, then it goes in its entirety, condition 3. If it remains, then I'll look at the then we'll come back to the timing and the timescales. So, is it the view of the committee that we go along with Councillor Dunn? Is it all right if we do a show of hands on this rather than have to wait for? I know Jeremy loves it when the clock comes on, but if we can do it by a show of hands, that would just be easier. Certainly with the... I don't think she's been on Countdown for about 20 years, Jeremy. You need to get up to date with your afternoon television viewing, I think. That Take Your Pick with Michael Miles. Does anyone remember that? We'll first of all then put Ian Darcy's proposal forward, which has been seconded, that we delete condition 3 in its entirety. All those in favour of that, please. And those against? So that's lost. We will now do what I promised was, so condition 3 is remaining. Are we happy to, I think the consensus seemed to be 6 months, unless anyone wants to. So,
happy to
Josh,
propose
yeah.
it.
Chair, given where we are in the year, in the season, could we at least say 9 months? Would that be? I know I proposed a year earlier.
Again,
but,
well, we've already spoken about daytime television, so I don't want to turn this into bargain hunt. So, and have a bidding war as such. I mean, someone did mention 12. Was it you, Kevin, mentioned 12 months? Forgive me if it wasn't.
No, I said about ensuring that it's in the off season, so there's no further big business incurs.
The bid is against you, Kathy. That seems to be what most people have said. So, apologies, Carly. Yes.
Sorry, can I just clarify on the 6 months? Are we talking about from the grant of approval or from the commencement of operation of the facility?
It was your suggestion, Patrick.
Well, so it would move from a pre-commencement to, I suppose, at the time that it would start, probably 6 months from that point. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take to erect the marquee, so that would actually probably give a bit more time. I suppose from the time of use, 6 months from that point.
Okay, so from when the use commences, yeah.
Would that be okay, Chair? Is that?
I understand. Well,
I'm happy to move that, and that actually would buy a bit more time for the applicant.
yeah, I mean, I understand your point, and you've articulated it. That's what I will now put to the vote once Kathy has spoken.
If they have it for 3 years, then they've got to start anyway by a date in January. So, in fact, they've got to start pretty quickly.
Which is why it would make sense to me. So, are we then happy, given that we've agreed to keep condition 3, are we then happy to add that 6-month rider on it? Okay, thank you. So that's condition 3 amended. We will now move on to condition 4, and I'll put, I think we've given this a good go around the houses. Ian's proposal would be to remove condition 4 in its entirety, which I think there did seem to be a little bit more consensus for, but we'll put it to the test. Those in favour of that, please. I thought we had, hence the given it a good going. But in the spirit of openness, and because I like you so much, Jeremy, of course you can.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I make an alternative suggestion, just to muddy the waters somewhat for condition 4?
No, in that case.
Is that the Argyle facility in general has a travel plan? Is that in that case? Can we simply just lift the travel plan from Argyle and use that as a travel plan so they don't have to submit a separate travel plan as a condition, but they basically just use the general travel plan put forward for Plymouth Argyle, because it is basically a sub-facility within the grounds.
How would we stand? Well, let's come to the officers first. So how would we look going down that sort of? Well, how would we look going down that sort of route?
It's not being submitted as part of this application, so I don't think it's something that we can then condition as part of this application. By all means, they could submit it as part of that condition. That's one thing that we have suggested is amend the existing travel plan you've got and submit it, and then we could do this as a compliance condition, but we haven't received it. So, yeah, you can't condition something that hasn't been submitted as part of this application. It would have been submitted as subsequent to previous applications.
So I think we can only decide to approve or reject what's in front of us. And if there is something, as it reads at the moment, if there's something that needs to be submitted later on, under whatever context, if the application is successful and they did want to submit, they would have to submit a travel plan pre-use. The content would be up to them. And if they wanted to make one up from scratch or get one off the shelf or something that another organisation is already using, that would be their choice. But I think it's fair to say that we can't agree to something that we haven't seen and hasn't been submitted. Is that fair? Does that sort of make sense? Okay. I'll go back to where we were, which I think was the proposal then just to remove condition 4, which we've, I think, given a good go around, and I'm going to block Jeremy out there. Those in favour of removing condition 4, please. And those against? So that's carried. I make that 10 to 3. Okay, so condition 4 then would be removed. Thank you very, very much. So we've made 2 changes to the conditions there. Are we ready to, I'm sensing and I'm hoping that we're ready to reach a conclusion on the application itself without any other references to countdown. Are people okay? I'll give any, because in fairness, it is an important application and it does merit our consideration. So one last chance, but if not, then thank you everyone for a really good debate. On the face of it, this is something that might well go through straight away, but I think we've teased out between us all some really good points. I think given that we have given some flexibility on condition 3 and removed condition 4, shows the benefit of actually bringing it here. Had it not been referred, then Amy's original set of conditions would have been approved under delegated authority, and the pre-use conditions would have remained. So it's only because Councillor Taylor has brought it here that we've been able to make those amendments and respond, I hope in part, to what Mr. Clark was calling for. So I think Councillor Taylor can take some credit there in allowing us the opportunity to do that. I am more than happy to support this application. Everything to me speaks in its favour. It's vital that we support groups like the Green Taverners. Forgive me, I hadn't heard the GT phrase before, but I will use that from now on. Well done to Jeremy for getting the word alacrity into the debate for the first time this year, and sui generis from Ian. So you're competing against each other. It's very, very impressive. I look forward to seeing this approved and constructed and used by the Green Taverners as soon as possible. So that's where I am. I'm happy to myself support the granting conditionally with the 2 changes we've made to the conditions. So if we could now open the formal voting, I'd be grateful. I will declare that carried. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. And
Chairman, just on a point of order, how quickly would the department process the application?
Hang on. Before you do, could I thank everybody who's taken the time to come today? We don't often get an audience at the planning committee, but it is, and people have used long words, especially given your support here today. But thank you very much, and I'm sure we all wish the GTs the very best for the coming season, and we look forward to seeing this in operation. So, safe journey home, and I think enjoy the light switch on tonight. Patrick.
Sorry, thanks, Joe. It's just out of curiosity, how quickly will the application be, the paperwork be, decision be note to be issued?
I think we can probably get that out tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anything on item number 7, which are the application decisions? No. Anything on the appeal decisions? Carly, is there anything from an officer perspective you need to or would like to draw our attention to?
No, thank you, Chair.
No? Okay, I don't think we've got any exempt business, so thank you very much, everybody, and see you in 4 weeks' time.